welcome everybody once again. I'm going to be going through a number of formulas in numbers that I've been exposed to, which have made a big difference to me. And I want to just run you through from the basics up to slightly more advanced versions. So let me start to share my screen. On the most basic level, I have a couple of tables over here. You'll see why they're duplicated in a minute. So I've got a few months and I've got a few categories of animals that I'm trying to track. And I want to calculate the total of these. So if I click in the row at the bottom that I want to add, there's a couple of ways that I can add a formula. The quickest way is clicking insert at the top, and I can choose new formula, and it inserts the formula bar, and I can move this out the way. It doesn't have to overlap that. I can move it out the way, and now I can start to enter my formula. The shortcut for that is just hitting the equal sign. So if you hit the equal sign, does exactly the same thing. But before we get into constructing formulae and functions, I want to have a quick look at some of the built-in ones. So we've got sum, average, minimum, maximum, count, and product. So I want to do a sum of all the dogs. Select it, and it automatically sums them up for me. So that's really nice. I don't even have to know any formulae to do this. Now, I'm also going to talk a little bit about best practices as we go through the process. So this is quite nice, but now there's a few months left to go in the year. And if I expand my table down to include those extra months, I've got a small problem over here because my formula hasn't moved down to the bottom. So now I've got to cut this out, move this to the bottom. And one of the features that Numbers has, I just undo this, I'm going to delete that formula. One of the features Numbers has is the ability to make a footer. So if I select my table and go to my table, you can see that I have one header column, one header for my rows, and I'm going to add a footer at the bottom. You can see the colors change slightly. Now if I select that cell and I insert the sum and I drag down, I now have additional rows, and if I autofill this down and I start adding in values here, you can see that it's automatically added those additional rows to my calculation. So this is adding up automatically. Let's just take 3,000. So footers are really important if you have tables where you want to keep your information together and you want to expand and contract the information. Very, very nice to be able to put your information in a footer, and then you can decrease or increase the size of that to add more information. When you're happy with that, you just leave it where it is. So now I'm going to move over to this guy where I've actually got some values filled in, and I'm going to complete this table. So I'm going to select this cell, I'm going to go insert sum, and there's my sum. So now if I select this cell and click on it, you can see I have a formula. It is the sum of the column dogs. Great. If I now click and drag to the right over here and I do my autofill, it's not just taken that value and added up this row, this column in every row, but it's taken the value and moved it across. So now we've got the sum of cats. We've got the sum of ducks. We've got the sum of geese. So that's a useful little opportunity for us to add our stuff up. Okay, so down here, again, one of the things that I enjoy about Numbers is the ability to create multiple tables. So I can take this information and put it in a little summary sheet over here. So I've got a little table that's only two rows high and 6 or 7 columns across. And what I want to do is I want to sum up average, minimum, do all of the options that I've got in terms of sum, average, minimum, maximum, count, and product. I want to do them, but take them not in this table, put them somewhere else. And I'll show you exactly why I'm going to do it in a minute. So I want this one to be a sum But now over here, it's not really referring to the content of these cells over here. It's looking within its table. So I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to say equals sum. We've got sum here. And now it's asking me for the value. So I'm going to click in this table. Oh, wrong one, sorry. I'm going to click in this table and drag across these 4 columns, hit return, and now it's summed up all of these values. And I can do exactly the same for all of these. I can say this equals average. And can you see how it's giving me, as I start to type, a list of the formulae that are available? So let's say average of these guys, right? Let's have a look at the minimum. Equals, and can I do a minimum over here? Let's have a look. Let's say minimum, and I'm just going to drag across these values and hit return. And there we can see the smallest one was 55560. Yep. Let's say maximum equals, and once again, maximum, and I'll choose these again. And yep, 78438 is the largest of all of those. Now count, we want to know how many of them are. So let's go equals, insert the count. I'm going to drag across those 4 again, and there are 4 items in there. You'll see why count's useful. And if you want to multiply them all together, again, I go equals and insert the product of these 4 again, and we're going to get some god-awful big number, which I don't even want to imagine. Now, imagine we have a complex series of spreadsheets with lots of tables spread all over the place, but I actually want them presented in a very small place somewhere else, away from all these big figures. So one of the things I can do is I can add a new sheet, and let's just call this overview. And I'm going to delete the existing table, go back to my previous table, and I can either cut, copy, or paste this. I'm going to copy it for the moment. Go to my first sheet, and I'm going to paste that in. So now this little table is going to be a summary of all of this data. I can delete this. It doesn't matter if it's there or not. So let's add a couple more. Let's see what our sum was 273,879. Let's make this 10,000. You can see that's added up to 294,829. 294,829. So all of these things are linked together. So if you want to make a beautiful spreadsheet that can have images, shapes, graphics, videos, and not be just one giant series of cells, Numbers is the baby for you. Okay, does that make sense? Cool, I'm going to move on. So the next example we get is something called Countif. Now, Countif is a formula, just move these guys, is a formula which will let us test some values, and it'll say, count this if something happens. So over here, Numbers will make it possible for us to format a cell, not just as a number, currency, percentage, but also as a tick box. And if I make something a tick box returns a value of true if it's checked, or false if it's not. So let's have a look and see what that looks like. So if I take this table and I copy it, and I paste it over here, if I take false, and I change the value from tick box to text, you'll see that all the ones that were checked are true, and all of the ones that are unchecked are false. Now, this is really useful when it comes to creating formulae or creating calculations based on this. So let's leave this open so you can see true, false over here. And I'm going to insert a calculation, or rather a function, which is Countif. So I'm going to type the equal sign. Once again, my little function bar comes in. And you notice when I'm in function mode, the formula bar on the format bar on the side changes to show me all the formula and gives me a description of it. So I want to see Countif. So I'm going to click on Countif, and it says the Countif function returns the number of cells in a collection that satisfy a given condition. And then it goes to show me what it looks like, and it gives me some examples. So let's see what it looks like. I'm going to say Countif. Right. And if I go to the left, you'll see there's a lot of counts. There's count, count A, count blank, Countif. That's the one that I want. I insert it, and it says, okay, test the array. Now, I can click and drag through these, or Numbers will also let me, if I click on the row header, it'll actually select the values that I want. I want that one. I want that one there. Now, the reason why it selected the bottom one goes back to the previous example I gave you about headers and footers. And I'm just doing that to reinforce it. So that's my array. That's what I wanted to count up. And the condition I wanted to test is if it's true, because I want to check all of the ones that have been ticked. And if I hit return, it gives me 17. If I uncheck it, it's not counting it anymore. So if I've got a list of items that I need to check off on an inventory, if I'm keeping an attendance register, anything that lends itself to a tick box, this is really useful. If I go back to this formula and I say, well, actually, I'm not interested of when this is an attendance register. I'm less interested of when they were there than when they weren't there. So I'm going to say false. So now my value is 2, 3, 4, 5. So super useful, the ability to be able to count things just by using checkboxes. Again, just to reinforce what I said earlier, you can see that this is only halfway through the month. So if I drag this down, my formula stays over there. Not a good look. So I want to delete that. And I want to insert, I'll go to my table settings, and I want to make that a footer. Now, if I do equals count if, and then I click over here, do you see, because it's a header, it hasn't selected the bottom row, it hasn't selected the top row, and I want to say, let's count these if they're true. I've got 13. Now I can add more days. Let's just fill this down. And now I can just keep ticking and so on. Once again, I can select this cell, I can fill it to the right, and all of these values automatically inherit the properties of that formula and fills to my right. So Countif, super useful. So let's move over to the Sumif. Now this kind of lends itself again to what Angelo was doing when he was creating a budget the other day. The only beauty of numbers is that you don't actually have to define your tables, because each table is by its own definition defined. So when Angelo was doing a set of formulas where he wanted to extract his monthly spending when he was doing his budget, he used a very similar construct. So what I want to do over here is I want to be able to pull out all the information about the dogs, all the information about the cats, without having to do any particularly complex sorting or finding over here. So what I can do is I can add a new table. And in this particular table, I only need two columns. One column will be my category, and my next column will be my totals. So what I want to do is I'm going to use the Sumif calculation. So the first thing I want to do is pull out all the dogs from here. So if my category is dogs, I can say, okay, I want this to equal, I'm going to type Sumif. You can see Sumif appears over here. Now, it needs to test the values. So the values that I wanted to test are this column over here. Right? So it's testing this category. The condition that I wanted to return is dogs. So to start off with, I'm just going to type dogs. And then the sum that I want to get comes from this column. And if I hit return, you'll see it totals the number of dogs. So if I add, let's make this one 70, you'll see the calculation is live. It makes it from 208 to 210. So that's pretty cool. I don't have to sort or find. I just have it look up. And if I add another row of dogs in here, let's make this September the 10th, and we get a couple more dogs, and I type 50 over here, you'll see the value increases. Now, that's nice, but this formula where I type in this actually lends itself to a little bit of error. So what I'm going to do is, instead of typing in dogs over here, I'm going to get this to reference this cell. So I'm going to highlight that and delete it. And I'm just going to say that value. So what it's going to do is it's going to look at this category, and if anything in that category matches what's in A2, then it'll return the amount. So I should get exactly the same thing. But text, yep, we're good there. So it's exactly the same thing. So now I can look at my other categories and go cats, ducks, mice, and geese. And if I select this and fill it down, it does exactly the same thing. If I click on this formula, you can see animals category, but now it's getting the value of this column. If I go to this one, it's getting the value of this column and this row. So once again, let's go back to my ducks. Let's increase our duck population to 120. Ducks increases. So if you need to extract, I mean, this is a very simple example, but if you've got 4,000 rows of items in here, you can create a really nice summary by using the Sumif. Okay, currency conversion. This is quite a fun one, especially for South Africa, where the value of the rand works like a yo-yo. So what we have to do first is we have to format our cells to the appropriate currency. If you don't format a cell to a particular currency, if I take dollar over here and go to my cell and I format as a currency, by default, it'll take the local currency. I've been working on the spreadsheet before and I already made it a US dollar, so it's remembered that. But this would say South African rand if we hadn't given it a specific, if I hadn't come in and chosen the pop-up. So let me take the rand values over here. In fact, I'm just going to click over there to select that one. Over here, no headers and footers. And I'm going to format one as currency, and that's South African rand. Format this one as currency, and it's remembered it for me. This is really nice. It's remembered it as euros. And you can see here's all the currencies that are built in. And I'm going to go to this one and choose sterling currency, and it's the British pound. Okay, fine. So let's start to fill in our values. So let's say a car costs $3,000. Format it properly. A motorbike, let's make it $2,000. A truck, $5,000. And a scooter, $1,500. Okay. Now I want to convert that to rands. So I select the cell, equals, and the formula is currency convert. And you can see there are a number of currencies. I'll go to currency convert. Now it says, what is the value that I want to look up? I want to look up that value. What is the currency code? Well, the code for the rand is ZAR. Hit return. And that's just converted it to rand. If I click and fill down, the formula is repeated. Now I can copy this and paste it into here and paste it into here. But even though I have taken the currency and formatted them in a particular currency, it's still looking this up because it's still got the ZAR. So if I go into here and type EUR for euro, and I type GPB for pound, sorry, GBP pound, and I format that down. That's currency, and I want that to be euros, and that's currency, and I want that to be UK sterling, which is British pound here. There we go, and I can fill that down, and I can fill that down. Now this is not just a static thing. Every time I open up the spreadsheet, it'll recalculate it. So if I want to know, actually, you know, what I'd quite like to do, so I'm going to add a column here, add a row here, and I'm going to say value of $1. And let's just put a 1 here. So at the moment, $1 is worth 16 rand 37 cents, 0.84 euros, and 77 British pence. And this will update itself. It's not a static thing. It looks on, I think it looks up Yahoo's currency converter and works just fine. Now, a lot of these examples that I've given you previously work on the if statement. And if is a very valuable little tool that you can use to make your spreadsheets work for you. So over here, we've got a little test. Is this number greater than 10? Well, 5 is not greater than 10, but 11 is. And if I hit 11, yes, 11 is greater than 10. So what does that look like? Let's have a look at this formula. So it says, if A2 is greater than 10, then put in yes, otherwise put in no. And we've tested it, it works. So if I put in 0, no, 0 is not greater than 10. 9,999 is definitely greater than 10. Now, we can also loop back to the original value. So over here, what we're going to do is if they get a number less than 59, they will have failed. Otherwise, it puts in the number. So let's see over here. If I open this up, it says if A2 is greater than 59, then they've passed. Otherwise, put in the score that they got. So 60 is a pass mark. If we put in 58, it passes through the number. It passes through the value of that. If we put in 75, they passed. So we don't just have to stick with numbers or just text. We can literally put in pretty much anything that we want to. Finally, we can base this on a calculation. So we want something to never be greater than 100. So if I take 35 and I add 70 to it, that number is the sum of these two. If I make that 75, 74, something is wrong here. So if this number is greater than 100, then it won't put it through. But if the number is less than 100, it gives us exactly what the number is. 35 plus 50 is 8. And it works exactly the same, but instead of just saying A2 is greater than 100, I'm saying A2 plus A3 is greater than 100. And if that's right, if it's less than 100, then just add up A2 and A3. And you can make these multiplication, you can make them division, you can make them pretty much anything that you want. Finally, you can actually, if I go back to this guy over here, I've got a little hidden one over here. What I've done with this one is I've taken this over here and I put an if statement that says, if this says yes, then make it passed, otherwise make it failed. So let's see what happens over here. If we give them a number of 9, which is less than 10, that's no, which means that failed. So if you have a look at that test again, if this cell is yes, then put in passed. But if it's not yes, then put in failed. So once again, let's go put in 11. And they passed. So the if statement can work across tables, it can work across sheets. So you can build yourself some really interesting formulae that give you the information that you want, extracts the information based on calculations and based on ifs. It's not just a static, this plus this equals that. It's if this plus this equals that, then do something else. The final thing that I want to show you is the ability to categorize and filter and sort. So what you saw earlier was the ability to add things up, extract them. But if I haven't got time to do that, and I just want to get a quick overview of the items over here, we have a very nice filter function. So if I select this table, you can see over here, I've got format and organize. If I click organize, I can create categories, I can sort, or I can filter. Now in this instance, I want to filter. So I'm going to turn on filters. I'm going to add a filter, and I want to filter by category. So I want to find, I just want to see the dogs. So I say, okay, I'm going to add a filter for category, and I'm going to make it a text. And I'm going to say, only show this filter if the text is dogs. Make return. It hides everything but dogs. So again, I can go back in there and say cats. And now it just shows me my cats. What was the other one? Geese. So this is a very nice way of showing and hiding your information. And I can turn this filter off and I can turn it on. So I don't have to delete this filter. I can just leave it sitting in the wings. The filter is applied to the table, but I can just bring it back and use it when I need it. Now, I'm going to do the same thing with this particular table. I'm going to add a filter where the value of this cell equals true. well, actually false. This is their attendance. I'm not interested in the days they were here. I just am interested in the days that they weren't here. It's got the Countif statement at the bottom. So it's adding it up to show me the number of times that the person was in attendance. So if I select this table and I go to my organize and I choose filter, I want to say, I want you to show me the text here when he wasn't here. So I want it to show me false. And it hides everything but the ones that were checked, which is nice. The problem is that this calculation will also show everything that's up at the top. It will also show the hidden stuff. It won't just show me these values. So in order to deal with this, we have another item called categories. So if I select this one and choose categories, I want to add a category for Babsy. And I want to base it around his attendance. So I choose him. And what this does is it makes a category for the ones that are checked and the ones that are not checked. So if I click on, you see it's add a little row here. This just says this is, I could change the name. We could say this is attended or didn't attend. So one of the things I can do here, this is the total number of entries that he attended. But if I click over here and I've got this little cog, this appears whenever I make a category. I want you to give me a subtotal. And you can see that there are 15, which agrees with this, and there was 0 over here. And this is live and dynamic. So if I click on September the 3rd, I made a mistake, they were there. He now moves up to the top. It subtotals that to 16, which agrees with this, and this is 0. The final one that I want to show you is conditional highlighting, because this is also quite useful. Sometimes it's difficult to pull the information out that you need, and you just want it to change color based on a series of conditions. So I'm going to select this column here, and I'm going to go to my format, conditional highlighting. And once again, in my sidebar, I can add a rule, and I've got numbers, text, dates, durations, blank. What I want to know is, if we get more than 60 dogs a day, that's a problem, or 60 of any animal a day. So I want to say if the number is greater or equal to, greater or equal to 60, then I want it to fill it in with red. And now if I take this number and I make this 65, it automatically changes to red. You can choose the pre-selected colors that they've got there. So if we go back to format conditional highlighting again, you can choose their predefined ones, and you can select from any of these, or I can make a custom style. So I can say, I actually just want the background to be black, to be white, but I want the text to be bold, and I want the text to be highlighted in red. And now we've got our numbers greater than 60 are highlighted in red. Less than 60 is not red. And that's it. I've given you some overviews about Sumif, about Countif, about using the if statement, currency conversion, and hopefully a nice way for you to look at your information and hide and show the data that you need to extract the data that you need easily and successfully.